All right, gang, here we are. So now we're going to proceed in Chapter 3, and we're going to configure and manage a Windows Server 2016 installation. Or I should say an instance of Windows Server 2016. Now we're going to deal with both Data Center and Server Core. And at this point, we should have been able to go through and install either one in Chapter 2. We're going to work with the different server roles and features, manage servers remotely, and work with Windows install images. We're also going to configure some services. And when it comes to Windows server roles, Windows Server basic installation has some limited functions, basic file and printer sharing. Their server roles and features have to be added to be able to take advantage of that functionality. So it's there, it's just an add-on, it's optional. Server roles and features can be added and updated through both GUI installation in Data Center as well as Server Core install. Now in Server Managers, you start the Add Roles and Features wizard in the Welcome window, or you can click Manage, Add Roles and Features from the menu. Now, you've got a Before You Begin window that opens up. You can bypass this window in the future by the selection of the option to skip it and say, I don't want to see this, or you can have it pop up every time. That's on you. So here's Data Center, and here's what it looks like. We've got Manage up top, Add Roles and Features. Before You Begin, and there's that little checkbox. We can skip it if we want, but each time we would go in to add a role or feature, this would pop up again, okay, unless we skipped it. The installation type window has two options, role-based or feature-based installation, and we've got remote desktop services installation. So here's our role-based or feature-based, and here's remote desktop. It's all a matter of what we're going to do. If we're going to configure a single server adding roles, services, and features, let's go with role-based. Now, in the server selection window, you choose a server from the server pool for installing roles and features. So we can install them remotely, not just the one local machine. You can also install roles and features on a virtual hard disk. So here we'll go pick this server. Okay. Domain number 1, MCSA 2016. Data Center eval. It's got an IP address. We can pick that one from the pool and say that's what we're going to assign roles to or features. Now in the server roles window, all the server roles available to that install will be listed. Now, here's the thing. I'm gonna move forward for a second. What version of server will you see this in? Data Center. Will you have this in Server Core? No, because we've got to use PowerShell commandlets to do all this. So you better have your network admin game on or your PowerShell game on when it comes to run a Server Core. All right. So we've got a little checkbox next to each one that'll allow us to select what we're going to do. Pick Hyper-V, and we'll make it a Hyper-V server, DHCP server, DNS server, Active Directory, domain services. Whatever we're going to do, we'll select those roles. Depending on the scope of the enterprise that we're dealing with, one server may do all, or one server may only have one feature or role. So the features windows list is lists all the available features and works like a server roles window. Once a server role with multiple associated role services is selected, the next step, it'll select which role services are needed. If a role service requires installing other roles and role services, it'll let you know to confirm that they're going to do that or that the install is going to make that change. So some of the roles require other roles or other functionality to be able to work. And if that's the case, it'll let you know, and you'll have to go ahead and acknowledge it. Now you select the roles, services if we're going to do a remote access. So we've got direct access and VPN, routing, and web application proxy. So let's enroll services for remote access. We confirm the installation selections, acknowledge what we just did, and then we proceed. Now, the procedure for removing roles and features is almost the exact same. We'll go in to Server Manager, click Manage, remove roles and features, and it's the same thing. We just undo what we did. Clear the little checkbox, and it makes the server no longer perform that role. Now use PowerShell and Server to add and remove server roles. Okay. If you don't want to use Server Manager, you can, in Desktop Experience, you could still run PowerShell. PowerShell is not limited to Server Core, and it's advisable that if the first instance, and it should rightfully be, your first instance of server should be data center. When you have the opportunity, run PowerShell. Get used to the PowerShell command prompts and the commandlets on your data center or desktop experience server, I should say, desktop experience server, so that you're comfortable with PowerShell. I've been saying, now I realize I've been saying data center when I should have been saying desktop experience for so long. I got data center in my mind for something else that I was working on yesterday. So you can use PowerShell to install and uninstall roles and features. You just got to use the right commandlets to get through it. Okay. So we've got to have the name string. If we're going to go remote, we've got to have the name resolution in there. You can use Server Manager or PowerShell commandlets. You can install and uninstall features to and from an offline virtual hard drive file. Virtual machines can be kept in an offline state until they're ready to be deployed. Now, deploying roles and features on a virtual hard drive, it's without having to start the VM, can save time and resources. It's so much more efficient to roll out VMs than it is a full system. Now we've got DSC, or Desired State Configuration. It's a feature that offers a way to manage and maintain servers with simple declarative statements. DSC can operate in one of two modes, push mode or pull mode. Now in push mode, a server configuration is manually sent out to one or more target servers by the administrator. Pull mode, instead of DSC configurations having to be sent to remote servers, servers can pull their configuration from a central server by using standard web protocols. Now a DSC script is created in PowerShell's Integrated Scripting Environment, ISE. You open from the Tools menu in Server Manager. The basic steps for using DSC are: create the script in PowerShell, run the script to create configuration files called Management Object Files, MOF, and then you'll start the DSC configuration commandlet in a PowerShell prompt. So that commandlet, verb, noun, start DSC configuration commandlet, that will get you going. So we've got local configuration manager. It's responsible for sending and pulling, or pushing and pulling, sending and receiving, pushing and pulling configurations, applying configurations, monitoring and reporting discrepancies between the desired state and the current state of a server. Now we can manage a server remotely. You can take advantage of the benefits of Server Core, yet still be able to use GUI on a remote machine. So the need for a physical keyboard monitor for each server is reduced, because we can just connect to it remotely from another system. Most remote management tasks are handled by using Server Manager. It's an MMC or Microsoft Management Console, or a PowerShell command line. If the server running Server Manager is a member of a domain and the server to add is also a domain member, you can add it with searching Active Directory, searching DNS, or importing a text file. You can manage servers running Windows Server 2003 and later. You can't manage a more recent version of Windows Server than the version on which Server Manager is running. So here we go. We can add servers to Server Manager. Currently, we've got these 3. We pick which one we want to add. Organizations with over a dozen or more servers may want to organize them into groups by department, location, or function. You could have operations department, the Albuquerque office, or all the DNS servers. Servers can be a member of more than one group. To create a server group in Server Manager, just click Manage and create server group in the menu. So here we're going to create a server group. We pick which ones are going to be part of the group. We come up with a name, domain members, boom. So there's domain member, and domain controller. There's the DC or DM. So the identifiers on it for what we're doing in the live virtual labs that we do. So we're going to enable and disable remote management by using WinRM. It's a Windows 2016 feature that provides command line interface for performing a variety of remote management tasks. So here we are using Server Manager groups. I can configure remote management right in here, enable or disable, just by a little checkbox. Now, to use an MMC to manage remote server, firewall rule changes need to be made on the remote server. Different MMCs require different rule changes. Configuring firewall rules with desktop experience, if the remote server to manage, the one that you want to manage, is running the desktop experience, just use the Windows Firewall Advanced Security MMC, and that'll help you configure the firewall rules. So here we are, Windows Firewall and Advanced Security. Here's our MMC, and we can go through and configure whatever we want when it comes to inbound rules here. We could also do it with a command line. We just need to know the commandlet. And here we go. Here's enable all 4 rules from the previous slide. Boom, 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 boom. All right. We've got special considerations for Server Core. Server Core does not have the COM+ network access firewall group. Firewall rules for several MMC snap-ins might need to be enabled separately. Windows Server 2016 has a number of tools to help you configure, update, manage, and deploy installation images. Now, this section covers the following topics. We're going to deal with Windows Deployment Services, working with WDS or Windows Deployment Services images, updating images, and managing images with PowerShell. Okay. So, we've got some things that we've got to get comfortable with here. So, Windows Deployment Services, WDS, that's a server role that facilitates installing Windows OSs across the network. Now, so Windows OSs, it's not just server. It could be that I'm going to push Win 10 out to client machines. Now, you need to configure these operating system properties before they're deployed. We have to run PXE on those client machines. PXE allows a computer to boot from an image stored on a network server rather than local storage. So we'll have PXE, or pre-boot execution environment, running on that client machine that we're going to push that image out to. So the image file in WDS, an image file is either a boot image or an install image. Now, a boot image allows a client to access a WDS server to access an install image. An install image contains the actual OS being deployed to the client computer. Now there's a discover image that can be used to boot the client computer that can't use PXE. And there's a capture image. It's a special boot image that creates an install image from a reference computer. Now we've got Windows imaging format files, WIM files. They're the most common image file used by WDS. It's a .wim extension. We've got Windows pre-installation environment, or PE. It's the minimum OS or minimal OS that has only the services needed to access the network, work with files, copy disk images, and jumpstart a Windows install. So if I've got Windows PE, or pre-installation environment, running on that Win10, and this is super light, that'll let me push that image out to it. Now multicasting, that's the method of delivering data to multiple computers on a network simultaneously. So let's say I have 20 client machines. They're currently running Windows PE, and it's not a full version of Windows. It's just the bare bones. That'll allow you to access the network, work with files and copy images, and get this thing up and running. Now your server then multicasts or pushes these images out to multiple computers all at the same time, simultaneously. So I can schedule this and it'll run, boom, there it goes. Now we could do a network boot from a network rather than local storage, or we've got WDSNBP.com. It's a bootstrap program that the WDS client downloads when performing a network boot. Now, WDS requires several support technologies. You got to have Windows Server 2016, Active Directory, DHCP server, DNS server, PXE compatible NICs, and suitable storage. So WDS requires all of these support technologies. Now, when it comes to installing and configuring the WDS role, use Server Manager or PowerShell to install WDS. And Server Manager, two role services will be selected to install by default: Deployment Server and Transport Server. To install WDS role with PowerShell, you'll use the Install Windows Feature WDS commandlet. Now, before you can use WDS, you have to perform the initial configuration. Configure WDS, right-click your server name on the left pane, and then click Configure Server to start WDS Configuration Wizard. The next window will give you the choice of installing WDS integrated with Active Directory or as a standalone server. Active Directory is the default, and it's what you should do. Pre-staging enables you to do a basic unattended installation. Pre-staged client computers are creating computer accounts for them in Active Directory. So here we go. We got that before you begin. Windows Deployment Services configuration window or wizard. So we pop through it. We want to have Active Directory by default. If you had to, you could do standalone. Okay, so we've got our PXE boot files and WDS management tools. Now, if DHCP is installed on the server, you need to configure how DHCP works with the WDS. We've got two options available. Both should be selected. Here we go. We're doing the PXE server install initial settings. After installing and configuring WDS, you can work with WDS images. And we'll go into a little more detail about the boot and install images. The main difference between using a WDS boot image and Windows installation DVD. The installation image is loaded across the network. Now, the installation image takes less, it's less labor intensive, if you will. It's not as brutal when it comes to how much time you've got to spend. Now, if we're booting it off a DVD, we do have to answer questions. But if we're pushing an image out, those questions have already been answered. We've already set this thing up, and we can have a file that answers those questions for us. Now, cancel or capture image, it captures an image off of the state of a computer that we've already got configured. It's a reference. It's like cloning one. Capture image is created in the WDS management console. Okay, and here we go. We run sysprep to strip out all the personalized information of that image that we capture. Okay, we can install images that contain the instructions for installing an OS. Install.wim file on a Windows installation DVD might contain multiple installation images. Okay, when you configure and install an image in WDS, the image must be added to an image group. An image group is a container where you can organize images with common properties. So we've got deployment image servicing and management, dism.exe. As a command line tool that you can use to update an image with patches, drivers, hotfixes, and service packs. Now, it can be used with offline or online images. So ideally, what we want to do, if I'm going to push an image out, I don't want to push an image out that's not updated. I want the image that I'm pushing out to already have the most current updates, everything that I need to have on it, so that the only thing I need to do is have a script that sets whatever the name and the personalized information, the name and IP addressing and all that. There's not much that I would have to worry about if I get this image set right. You could use dism.exe in a command to enable or disable features in an existing image. So here we are with the commandlets going through. And we've got some more here. Okay, so we've got the ability to configure services. Now in Server Manager, you can access services through the local server node. Now, things you may have to do is start services, stop services, restart services, pause, resume, copy a service. So here we are in Server Manager. You see the local server, server name, display name, and the service. The status of the service and how was it started. Okay. Using MMC, you're able to go in the Tools menu in Server Manager and access the Services MMC. And in there, we've got a snap-in. It's part of the Computer Management MMC. And you can use the Services snap-in to set the service startup type, set the service logon account, set the service recovery options, or view service dependencies. Here we are using the DNS client properties, how it starts up. Here we are, DNS client properties on a local, how you're logging on. Okay, now the first failure, what happens? Do you want to restart or just go ahead and take no action for recovery? And then the dependencies. What is this service dependent upon? So configuring services with PowerShell, you'll get used to these. All right. You've got get service, start service, stop service, restart service, suspend service. Remember the commandlets. Verb, noun. Verb, noun. What you're doing it to. Okay? So, you need to add roles and features to take advantage of all the power of Windows Server 2016. Doesn't matter if you're talking server core or data center. Or not data center. Wow. Desktop experience. Here I go with data center again. I told you I got data center on my mind from yesterday. You can add and remove features to and from offline virtual hard disks and WIM file images with the DISM command. And you can do that in both Desktop Experience as well as Server Core. You can add servers to Server Manager and perform most management tasks on remote servers. You can connect to most of those servers remotely. You may have issues depending on if it is a very old version. It's one of those we'll deal with it when we get to it, but it's knowing the rules, and we've gone over those. To organize the servers that you're managing, create a groups that you can put the servers in Server Manager. Now, WinRM has a command line interface for performing a variety of tasks. You need to configure Windows Firewall or firewall rules to allow remote management with an MMC. The WDS server role facilitates installing Windows OSs across a network. That's how WDS is how we're going to push those images out. The WDS process starts with a client computer that has PXE compatible NIC. The WDS server role has two role services, deployment server and transport server. The WDS, if we want to use it, you need both boot and install images. If you have clients that can't PXE boot, you can create a Discover image. That'll allow you to boot from a CD or DVD and access a WD server for the install image. Install images can be updated with patches, hotfixes, service packs by using the dism.exe command. And you can configure services with the services MMC or PowerShell. So if you are using Desktop Experience, if you got the chance, use PowerShell, get comfortable with it. All right. So I'll see you in the next one.